Hey Ben.
Hello, Josh. Where are we right now?
We are in Salvador, Brazil, in Bertrand's apartment in the Itapua neighborhood, 20 minutes from downtown or so.
Hour by bus.
Hour by bus, shorter by motor taxi. We'll go for that some other time, I guess. I guess we haven't recapped the tail end of Manaus or our few days in Rio in between the end of the group stage and the start of round of 16. So we're going to do that quick.
That was a week ago already.
Yeah, it's been a while. I think our last video journal was in the river hostel in the Amazon before we had gone to the game. I guess the next morning didn't really do a whole lot. Had breakfast and kind of just hassled the guy who was running things for hours, trying to make sure we got out of there on time to get to the game. We took little canoes with hitch-on motors on the back of them, probably half an hour, I would say, to like a little landing area where there were some taxis waiting, and we chilled on some dirt roads for probably an hour-ish, and got back to the Amazon Center to pick up tickets with Alex and Barrett, and then went back to our hostel, grabbed some beer, and headed out for the game. We're gonna let Ben talk about the game. You have camera.
All right. Yeah, the beer was actually pretty cheap over by our hostel. It was 6 hay ice for a liter of beer, so not bad. We filled up on that before taxiing down. Leonardo had arranged for probably 8 or 9 of us a van to get down to the stadium, so that was actually pretty nice. We were walking around for a little bit, went up to a bar / apparently it was somebody's house and they were just hanging out, and then had some drinks there. We were heckling other US fans to come up and drink with us, and we probably had around 20-ish people by the end of the day before we headed to the stadium, all hanging out with us. And then we walked over to the stadium. I was actually pretty impressed with it. Everything was really new, clean. It was very hot and humid still. I had a sheen of sweat all over my arms for the entire game. So let's see. Portugal scored in the first 5 minutes.
Okay.
That was kind of depressing, but we were sitting in the U.S. supporter section, and that really didn't get us that down. We were still upbeat and loud in our cheering, and like, I don't know, it felt good, and we kind of knew something exciting was going to happen. And went into the second half. The U.S. scored. That was exciting. Everybody's jumping up, high-fiving, hugging random people, throwing beer. It's just an incredible feeling. And then that's about the point where I had this feeling where nothing else mattered, and the only thing that was important was going on in that game right then and there. I was so invested in it, and I knew that I wanted to see as many U.S. games as I could at that moment in time. And then the U.S. scored again.
Yeah. How was that in our section?
I don't remember it. What happened?
Just further pandemonium, I guess. Even after the first goal, just to tie it, it was crazy. But after that second goal happened, I mean, everybody was just kind of, I would say it was kind of almost shock. But I mean, we were doing well in the game. It shouldn't have been that surprising. But
yeah, that's true. So 2-1 leading into the final minutes of the game. The assistant referee puts 5 minutes on stoppage time clock.
How many would you have put?
I mean, probably around 4.
Okay, or less.
Or less. And the 5th minute comes, and Ronaldo makes a cross and gets headed in. I don't even know who scored that goal.
Me neither. The cross was perfect, though.
As you'd expect from Ronaldo.
Yeah.
And that was the final play of the game. It ended in a 2-2 draw. Our section went silent after that goal. Josh and I walked out without saying a single word to each other for probably about 15 minutes. My first words to Josh after that were, "Josh, I really thought that was going to be one of the best moments of my entire life."
Yeah.
After that, we just walked to a gas station and waited for everybody else to show up to bus back to the hostel.
What Leonardo had some interesting conspiracy theories about the whole World Cup.
It's true. He said that everything was rigged and pre-planned. Every World Cup has been, except for the 1994 World Cup in the U.S. That one was real. That one actually happened.
What were your thoughts with Leonardo compared to what everybody else had to say?
The fact that we had a place to sleep, provided food, and we actually got a bed. I was my first bed of the entire trip. I didn't have a problem with him. Might have charged a little too much, but
Yeah.
I didn't think it was bad.
Okay. The rest of Manaus trip was basically
The next day we walked around with a couple of other people. Names escape my mind right now. And Brazil played maybe at like 1 or 2 p.m.
yeah.
We went to the square in Manaus, which was right next to the Amazon Theater. And in the plaza area, they had 2 ginormous TVs set up, so we watched the first half there. Everything was closed because everybody was watching the Brazil game. I think that's kind of a cool cultural thing with Brazil. I don't know if that's the case in other countries, but
Definitely not the U.S.
yeah. And then we took a taxi back to the airport. Josh did the estimation, and we were going 81 and a 25
Yeah.
at one point. So it didn't take very long to get there. At the airport, which we will be going back to in 2 days,
Yeah. Looking forward to it.
we played some FIFA as well as cross between foosball,
Chess.
checkers,
Croquet maybe a little bit too with like the whole deal. Yeah.
with the eye coordination for sure. We played that for probably about 4 hours in the fan zone area, and then took our flight to Belém, where we hung out at the airport for 12 hours. We both got comfortable leather reclining chairs.
Oh yeah. Played some Farkle.
Yeah, we probably slept for like 4 hours that day.
Yeah, or more.
Yeah.
Didn't get to watch any games though.
On one of our stops through Santarém, Josh had an aisle seat, I had a window seat, and the guy between us had a cold and kept coughing, didn't cover his mouth, and coughed the entire hour and a half flight.
Plus his elbows were both out and touching us
Yeah.
like that.
But I think maybe that's what got me sick. I was still haven't fully recovered. There's probably a number of other things, but that's what I'm blaming it on.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to talk about there, Josh?
From our day at the airport.
Day at the airport or the next day?
Well, what we got back, and then the girls came the next morning, right?
Yeah.
Lindsay and Erica, Ben's friends.
And Shelby's old roommate, Lindsay.
Okay, yeah, Ben's girlfriend's friend, and then a friend of hers. Guess they both weren't really your friends, but it was good to see them.
Our internet was out before going to Manaus, and we were hoping they would be back on by the time we got back. It wasn't, and so their flight was supposed to land around 8 a.m., and I was expecting them to show up 9:30, 10-ish. So I just kind of hung out in the apartment, waited for them. Noon came around, and no sign of them. So I finally went over, grabbed something to eat, and got on the internet, and found out that they didn't have the address to the apartment. Apparently I forgot to give them that.
It's a pretty important piece of information, I would say.
Yeah, so my bad guys, sorry. eventually they did show up at like 12:30, and then we went to the France versus Ecuador game. That was a little boring because it was 0-0. Unfortunately, they didn't get to see a goal. But I think the atmosphere was still pretty cool. Taking the subway to the stadium, the Ecuadorian fans were cheering and kind of getting into it with the France fans.
I found it ironic that France's mascot was the chicken. I don't think I'd ever known that before.
I think it's a rooster.
We'll say it's a chicken.
Yeah, okay, so the next day, we went to our favorite restaurant.
Oh, yeah.
And then the next day, Lindsay left. We did go watch the U.S. game at FanFest.
U.S. versus Germany, yeah. Got to see them qualify for round of 16.
Yeah.
Never really cheered for a loss before, but it's happy days, I guess.
Yeah. And then Lindsay left. The next morning, Mike and his girlfriend Katie showed up.
Was that the next day?
That was the next day. Lindsay
Really?
left, and then the next day Mike came.
Okay.
And they got to our apartment probably around 1. We just kind of hung out, went to Copacabana, to our favorite restaurant.
Before they showed up, though, you talked about how the fact that only the U.S. games mattered to you anymore. So that morning was spent doing what?
Looking on Craigslist to see how we were going to get tickets to the U.S.'s round of 16 game in Salvador. And I think this was Friday. Was it a Friday or was it a Thursday?
I have no idea.
They came in on a Friday. So this was Friday morning now. Josh and I hadn't decided what we were going to do Thursday night. Decided to sleep on it. Friday morning comes, and we decide to walk over to the ticketing office in Rio to see how much our Colombia versus Uruguay tickets are going for on Saturday. Josh just got a mosquito. Well done. So we walked over there, and the not ticket brokers, people scalping it were selling tickets for $900, $900 US. So Josh and I felt pretty comfortable that we would be able to find somebody to buy our tickets from us, especially because it was 2 South American teams playing. So we went back to the apartment, and we found a guy from Colombia to trade his tickets to the quarterfinal in Brasilia for our game in Rio. And the Brasilia game is where the U.S. would have played if they beat Belgium.
Mm-hmm.
So we traded that plus face value of the tickets, and thought about what we were going to do. Were we either going to trade those or sell those and then just pay for our way to Salvador, or were we going to hang on to them? We eventually, I knew that once we had those tickets, I would be super sad if the U.S. won and we no longer had tickets to see the U.S. game.
Yeah.
Playing in a quarterfinal. That would have been really depressing for me. So I really wanted to hold on to those tickets, but we also really wanted to go see the U.S. And it worked out that flights kind of got cheap-ish. So we booked our flight to Salvador, booked a flight from Salvador to Brasilia, and then Brasilia back to Rio.
You're gonna go through the whole rundown with the. Let me go through it.
We're in Salvador.
I guess Ben was really sure about wanting to keep up the quarterfinal tickets.
I said that.
He'd feel sick if the U.S. qualified. I was not so sure and thought maybe we could sell them and pay for a plane ticket and round a 16 ticket for the U.S. game. The flights were getting expensive. A bus trip to Salvador was staying very constant.
My idea, 25 hours.
25 hours on a bus, one way, for 150 US, right? About.
Yeah.
$300 round trip, but it would have been 50 hours on a bus.
Would have been very picturesque.
Maybe. We'll never know, I guess. We flew here. But we were looking at some tickets for the game in Salvador. I was still sitting on the possibility of getting supporters tickets at face value through the U.S. men's national team website. That just wasn't coming through though. We found a couple people on Craigslist who had extras to the U.S. game, but they wanted an arm and a leg for them. I think we heard prices up to $800 that some people quoted us, and we kind of told them F you in not so many words and came back with something more reasonable. We had one guy who we were going to meet up and buy tickets from, and he got his tickets stolen from him at FIFA Fan Fest because he brought $1,500 worth of soccer tickets to a beach full of pickpocketers. So he texted us and said, hey, he couldn't meet up. So we found somebody else who's going to sell them to us for $300 a piece, which is still over face value. And we went to go pull out a few $1,000s from the ATM, and did it work or it didn't?
For me, it didn't work. For you, it did.
Okay, so I was just going to cover your half. But then we got back, logged on the internet real quick, and Ben had an email from the U.S. men's national team that there were tickets available at face value for the fan section in Salvador. So it was like, just bang, bang, bang. We bought those tickets, booked a place to stay that night. I tried to book the bus at that point, right? And
That was earlier in the day.
That was earlier in the day?
Yeah.
Okay, so we hadn't had transportation booked up here yet. We were only going to do it one way though. We already booked our flights from Salvador to Brasilia back to Rio. So we were going to book the bus the next morning. But I logged on, checked Kayak, and there was a flight for $400 and some change, $450. What are you laughing about? I did not want to get in that bus.
$400 and change is like, it's like $403, $404.
Yeah, so it's $450, and then probably
And then change.
$460, something like that. Either way, it was an extra $160 to cut our travel time by 20 hours. Plus the Azul flight was awesome, you have to admit. Free
Yes.
TV, snacks up the wazoo.
They remind me of Midwest Airlines, which no longer exists.
Okay, yeah, no idea.
Give it some time.
I guess, yeah, so we booked that stuff, and then Mike and Katie still had a few more days left. They ended up going to the game that we no longer had tickets to. We were going to try to go to Sugarloaf with them one day, but it was real dark out, or hazy, sorry, not dark, cloudy and hazy. Couldn't even see the mountain from our hotel, so we decided to nix that. Hung out on the beach most of the day.
Yeah. I mean, one of the days was just Josh and I planning
Yeah.
our trip, our last week.
Then we watched the game on TV that we didn't have tickets to anymore. Our internet went out again. And then the day after that, it was a little more clear, and it was Mike and Katie's last full day there. So we went up to Sugarloaf, which was cool. I ended up walking back down. We found out that it's really hard to plan meeting up with different people without cell phones or anything. Because we were supposed to meet at the middle mountain, and I started walking down and realized the trail went all the way to the bottom, so I kind of goofed up there. And then later, the three of Ben, Mike, and Katie went up to Christ the Redeemer. We were supposed to meet at Hippie Fair after receiving a text from them. I never got that text, but I thought it was my fault. Guess it was more like half and half.
Whatever.
But I went over to Hippie Fair, missed them there. Kind of a day of missed meeting places, I guess. Came back, probably went. Do we even have dinner that night, really? I feel like all of us were kind of.
No, I don't think we did. But we would have gone to our favorite restaurant.
I think maybe me and you were feeling crappy that day.
Yeah, I just wanted to sleep. It's the only thing I wanted to do the 3 days in
Sleeping
Rio.
very early. And then the next day they left, right? We came up here.
Next morning.
Yeah, Mike and Katie left. We took the subway towards the airport, and then walked to the airport from the subway station, which was pretty easy.
Yeah. Very easy.
I saw Arsene Wenger at the airport. That was kind of cool. Legendary English Premier League coach that Ben doesn't know who he is. I don't know. You want to stop there and maybe talk about Salvador some other time?
Yeah, we're gonna stop there and talk about Salvador some other time.